there is a biological cycle that sabotages any diet, and you're probably inside it without knowing it. I'm not talking about the lack of willpower, lack of motivation. I'm talking about a precise mechanism with 5 phases, 3 hormones, and 3 daily triggers that every day set it off. Let me show you how it works. So the cycle is kind of very simple, but even so common. There is the phase 1, the restriction. How does it work? You decide to change, of course. You cut calories, eliminate something or more than something. In the first few weeks it works. You see the numbers moving, like you feel motivated because you're seeing some results. But then there is the phase 2. So there is a biological adaptation. Why? Because the body is not passive. It responds to restriction as if it were a famine, like it slows down the metabolism, amplifies the hunger signals, and it makes even forbidden food more desirable, because biologically we are projected in this way in order to survive in case of emergency. It's not weakness, it's our system. Phase 3 is the breakdown. What? You're giving in. A meal, an evening, a tough week, it doesn't matter. The biological system does what is programmed to, because you're not giving in. Is the body that is completing a survival program that thousands of years old, because we didn't have the fridges, we didn't have supermarket, this kind of stuff, so we needed to survive at that time, and our biological system is still that way. But then what happens that this actually leads to guilt, and this is the phase 4. This is the real problem, to be honest. Why? Because in the phase 4, what you think is I've ruined everything, and this is the real problem. Not because you're giving in, but because the response that it generates will create more shame that will fuel the cycle, because the shame doesn't stop the cycle, but it fuels it. This is a big problem. Then we have the last phase. The last phase is very, very simple. You try to restart, but how? Strict restriction. You start over, but with tighter rules, harder diets, with lower calories, less food, etc. So the cycle restarts, but stronger than before. If you recognize yourself in this pattern, no worries, it's not a coincidence. It's like the standard structure of almost every restrictive approach. So let's talk about biology now, because it's very, very important to understand it in order to prevent it as well. Or at least understand how to act in this way. So what happens in phase 2 has a very clear biological explanation. So phase 2, we said that we have a biological adaptation. The body in restriction activates 3 hormonal signals that work against us at the same time. One is the cortisol. What is the cortisol? Probably everyone knows is the stress hormones, which will lower the threshold for giving in. So this is very important to know. The second one instead is the ghrelin, because a restrictive diet amplifies the ghrelin, the hunger hormone, which becomes more insistent week after week. It's not the opposite, so intensifies. The third one is that the body will reduce, let's say, the leptin, that is the satiety hormone, which stops signaling fullness, so you keep eating without ever stopping, because you don't feel ever full, to be honest. In this video, I will not give you the precise number, how much they rise, how quickly. We look at this in the free course if you want, so I will put the link below. So feel free to join, guys, it's a free course. And over there you will find even also the exercise to understand in which phase you're in, and how to stop the cycle, etc. So feel free to join, there are other resources over there. What matters to understand now is this. When you are in a prolonged restriction, basically, you're fighting against 3 biological mechanisms at once. So the willpower is not designed to win against biology in the long term, And in everyday life, there are even 3 more situations that lower the threshold towards giving in more than anything else. And the first one, of course, is stress. Why? Because when cortisol is already high, from external reasons, for example, work, relationships, exhaustions, everyday life, it takes a very little to trigger the cycle. it's easy to give up. The second one instead is the boredom. Boredom cravings are not hunger. It's just the brain that is seeking for some form of stimulation. What is the best form of stimulation? The quickest is food in sugar and fat, one of the fastest. Even most accessible stimuli that the brain knows. And the third one is the social life. Why? Because a dinner out, drinking with friends, a birthday, whatsoever, for someone that follows a rigid plan, these moments are panic moments because basically activate the all or nothing thinking, leading to break the plan, and then you stop, you know that. So what is the solution to this? Let's understand that something that works needs to be different from a rigid plan. Why? Because this requires more willpower, stress, etc. So this will fuel the cycle. So we need something that is the opposite. What works is building a system that doesn't activate the cycle actually in the first place. And an approach where the body is not put in a famine mode, you know, because social life needs to be included inside the plan, not outside it. Because a meal of plan doesn't mean that you're giving in. It needs to be built in the approach. So when the flexibility is structured and not random, of course, the free triggers basically lose most of their power. Not because they disappear, because the triggers will always be there. But at least they no longer trigger the mechanism, you know that. This is the principle behind the 80-20 method, for example. We'll go into it in the following lessons, but the fundamental point right now is this. The cycle breaks by changing the structure, not the strength of the character. So you don't need to rely on your willpower, motivation, this kind of stuff, but changing the system. If you recognize yourself in one of those 5 phases, I have something useful for you. In the free course that is called Body Foundation, there is a specific guided exercise for this. So you over there will identify in which phase you're in right now, and then you will understand the trigger that sets off in your life. There are different videos divided by weeks. It's completely free. The link will be in the description. And if this video gave to you a clear picture of something you couldn't quite see before, well, feel free to share it with someone who is still inside this cycle without knowing it. I'll see you there.